This is Susan Meehan, and today is Wednesday, August 27th, 2014, and I'm here with Elizabeth and George Gardner in the recording studio at the Cumberland County Historical Society in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And I'd like to take a few moments to read just briefly why the Gardners are such valued members of the Historical Society. It's through funding provided by their generous donation that this recording is a reality today. With their monies, Elizabeth and George have made possible the creation of a state-of-the-art recording studio for making digital recordings of oral histories and other filming that will enhance the holdings and the working of the society. The grant monies allowed for the purchase of the necessary computer elements and the equipment, and also allowed the society to employ a professional director for the entire digital initiative, which also includes the creation of a digital encyclopedia of Cumberland County and the creation of online access to some of the society's library indices. Now, George has had a very long and successful business career based chiefly in Pennsylvania, and we have several written and oral, well, more than several, many written and oral records of George's astonishing accomplishments. So today, we're going to focus a bit more on the personal side of their Cumberland County experiences, and I think that we know that George moved to Carlisle in the early 1960s. Is that correct?
Yes.
Elizabeth, are you a lifelong resident of
Yes.
Cumberland County?
I was born here, Carlisle Hospital.
All right. The hospital that no longer stands.
No longer.
And if
We
you
have a piece of it, though. We have a rock.
do you?
Yes.
All right. And was your family also from Cumberland County, Elizabeth?
Yes.
And what was the nature of their work? Were they in town or were they rural? Or
My father was in, we were on South Middleton, right across. So, but Carlisle was where we were most all the time. And my dad worked here, and my mother had died when I was born. And I have her, my stepmother's family was the same as my father's. After 5 years, he had married. So I've been in Carlisle for a long time.
so you went to, which schools did you attend?
I had to go to Boiling Springs, and I graduated from there.
Oh. Okay.
But we did everything else in Carlisle.
Okay.
Yes, I got to know so many Carlisle students.
But you were one of the original bubblers then.
Yes.
And I can tell you've continued to bubble.
Yes.
Well, she also was capped at Dickinson as a nurse. The Carlisle Hospital had a program to teach nursing back then, and she actually was capped at Dickinson. Some of their classes were there, and some of the professors were involved in it. So she had a nursing career.
I have worked. When I met George, I was getting ready to retire after 40-some years of working.
Well, I was
So-
going to ask you about that later, but I think this would be a good time to talk about how you met and
Oh, that's my favorite story.
oh, good.
Well, should I say one of them? Do you want to lead off, or do you want me to?
I was in the office of Dr. Cox for 25 years.
Who was an
And
optician?
he was a otolaryngologist and an ophthalmologist.
Okay.
So anyway, I saw one of the girls. She's about 21, one of our nurses. And I said, would you go to Hershey with me to ride the roller coaster? And I'm like going on 60. And
You're
she
actually
looked
55.
at me, and so finally,
I found out later.
she didn't say anything, so I just, went back. And I was up at the desk, and this gentleman came out and said, if I asked you to go to Hershey with me, would you go? I said no. And the girls said, well, why wouldn't you go? And Dr. Cox said, why'd you do that to my neighbor? And I said, I don't know him. I don't know who he is. And so,
Let me pick up on this. She kept saying no, and the reason I was there was because I had an eye problem, and Dr. Cox had me come in every 2 weeks so he could look at my eye. Well, and that's when she pulled this. I was in the other room. They had dilated my eye, you know, and they make you sit there for a while. And I heard this woman say she had been to Hershey Park with someone, and they didn't want to ride the roller coaster with her. And she wished she had somebody that would ride the roller coaster with her. So I came out and made that statement she's talking about. But it went on for every 2 weeks. I would come in, and I'd say, you ready to ride the roller coaster? And the answer was always no. Went on for several months. And finally, the newspaper had a back page ad, Hershey Park, last chance for the year. And so I tore the back page out. Next time I went in, I shoved it across the desk at her and said, this is your last chance. She didn't say anything, but she was the nurse that took me back into the dark room where they turn all the lights out and examine your eyes, you know, and all that. And I had the opportunity to touch her hand and say, why don't you go to Hershey Park with me and we'll ride the roller coaster? She said yes.
but I had to know him a little bit better.
Well, after several months, you knew me well enough.
But that wasn't your only roller coaster ride, though. Tell that.
Well, after we broke the ice, then she didn't mind if I invite. There are a lot of roller coasters around, even in Cumberland County. Willow Mill Park was still in operation. It had a coaster.
Is Williams Grove?
Williams Grove had one called the Zipper.
Mhm.
Do you remember the
Yes.
Zipper? And we get down there and ride, yeah. So I gradually got under her skin a little bit with asking her to ride the coasters, but she liked that Comet down at Hershey Park. So we get down there. We went up to Knobel's Grove up at Edleysburg too, and rode up there. It's up near Sunbury.
But I think you eventually, didn't you belong to this?
Oh yes,
Very
I
nice.
asked her to. I heard about this American coaster enthusiast, and I asked her to see if she could find out where they were located. She dug it up. I don't know how she did that, but we became members of the ACE group, American Coaster Enthusiasts.
And I was happy to hear on television that people who ride roller coasters are people who want to enjoy life.
Well, it's clear it was true in your case.
Well, it got to the place where we joined a couple of different roller coaster groups, and we could talk about coasters all day.
Well, it's a very unique experience, though.
Yes.
Sorry, just
Here's your picture.
Oh, okay.
you guys can just keep doing your thing. I'll get
Oh,
pictures
all
of
right.
you.
Okay,
Actually, doing this.
all right.
Yeah, perhaps I should put my roller coaster cap on. You know,
Oh.
I don't know whether
Oh,
she
there you
wants to put it on or
go.
not.
Absolutely.
We
Mess up.
yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
I like it.
Well, now you
Well,
did.
let me get it on right here.
All right, there you go.
Ah.
Hold on.
How's that? Yes. This is a cap from Blackpool Pleasure Beach in Blackpool, England. And we managed to get with a group that went over there and met the owners of the park. In England, people own parks. Companies don't own parks. In England, they have a different legal system. And you don't have to incorporate. So people own the amusement parks, bakeries, you know, whatever. So we met the owners of the park, and they escorted us all around. And like I say, we have a few mementos from that. She doesn't like to put it on because
Well, it
then she
messes up,
has to
gives
go
you
to
hat
the,
hair,
to
right?
the hairdresser. I don't know whether mine is still decent or not, and it doesn't matter much, you know.
So you went to England. Did you go to Canada and other
Well,
places to do this?
We got with a group that was coasting through England, they called it. And we went to all of the various parks in England. One was run by a pig farmer. And he had his pig farm there, and then he had built this amusement park with a bunch of roller coasters alongside of it. When the wind wasn't right, you know, it was a little touchy, but otherwise it was a nice park, and you could see the pig farm there, all the pigs running around.
So when you rode, did you try to sit in the front, or did that not matter so much?
I wanted to get on one that would take me around 50 rides. And so I quickly got in the front, and then I would go to the back, and then I would get in the middle, and then I'd get out before George, and I'd run and get on another one, and we made it for 50.
Well, that was the one up at Conneaut
Yeah.
Lake, up near Erie, Meadville, someplace up in the northwestern
Yeah.
part of the state. And she got this idea that someone told her if she rode 50 times, they would make her a Conneauter.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, I want to ride 50 times, and she'd get off the thing and run back around and get back on. I didn't make it. I didn't make it to 50 because sometimes the train would leave before I even got back to it.
And I was in my late 60s at that time.
And did you get to be a Connie
Oh,
after?
yes, oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't think you were that old. You might have been in your late 50s.
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
Well, we could argue all day, but
Well, it sounds
But
like
I
it
was so happy that I could do that.
Oh, yeah.
And we did have a lot of fun riding roller coasters all over the world after we were married, and enjoyed it all.
we went over to Vienna one time, and they had a beautiful park there. Prater Park it's called. And it had a big Ferris wheel. So we got on the Ferris wheel, and in the States here, you get on a Ferris wheel, and after they get it all loaded, then you go around and around and around. Well, this thing, it had old-time trolley cars, wooden trolley cars where the passengers were. There were no seats in them, you just stood in it. So we got on, and the thing would index, and then the next one would load, and index, offload, unload. We finally got up to the top. It was 300 feet high, so we could see all over Vienna. It came back down around, and we got off. It never did go around. So, but, you
It
know,
is.
Pretty tame after a roller coaster.
what are you going to do? I mean, it was fun. Well, they had some roller coasters there, too. Yeah, we rode those. And the roller coasters were our favorites. We went out to Kings Island at Cincinnati one time, and they had a double lift hill coaster. Now, the lift hill is where the car goes up, and then you come down the other side, and you go all around the track and go back to the station. Well, this one had a double lift hill. You go up, you come down, you roll all around, then you go up another lift hill, and you come down and roll all around. It's called the Beast,
Oh.
and I think that's always
We
been
did.
my favorite. Was
Yeah.
that yours? I think it was, yeah. You get it?
So now, are you continuing to do this, or you
Well,
haven't for a while?
No, I no longer could do that.
We, talking about that Kings Island park, she had to use the bathroom. So we were walking down a walk, and here's a lady's bathroom, you know, maybe 20, 30 yards off the pathway. So she went up, and I just stayed there. And she didn't come back out. Other women were going in and coming back out. And finally, I asked one woman going in, I said, would you check on my wife? Because she went in some time ago and hasn't come back out. she came back out and said, yeah, the National Geographic reporter is in there interviewing her.
Just about everywhere I went, I was I a marathon runner, or somebody always asking me, why are you doing this?
Well, we finally got her granddaughter. We like to go up to, what's the name of the park up there at Sandusky?
Yeah.
Cedar Point? is it?
Cedar Point, yes, thank you. And her daughter and her granddaughter, grandson, and her daughter's husband took us, and we went up to Cedar Point. Well, she wasn't as interested in riding, getting on in years, but the granddaughter decided she was going to ride with me. Oh, so I had a pretty good time with that. We got on a crazy, what was that? Chaos was
Yes.
the name of that ride. It was a thing that you never knew which way was up or which way was down. It was always going some different way and throwing you all over the place. Well, I got on with Elizabeth. That's the granddaughter. Elizabeth has the same thing. And so we were riding this thing, and we gets off of it. I said, you want to ride again? She says, yeah, but I want to do it myself this time. I got to ride one time with her.
She was cool.
Well, now I know that I want to come back to Carlisle for just a minute, but I
Sure,
think
sure.
this is connected. Did you sometimes fly to do this? Weren't you a pilot?
Well, yes, but normally when we would go to coasters, it wasn't that convenient to fly, so we would usually drive. I used the airplane a good bit in my business, but I didn't do that much with it. Now, we did have to fly to some of the amusement parks, but we just paid somebody else to do that.
Well, could you talk a little bit about your involvement in establishing the Carlisle Airport?
Yes, I can get into that.
Did you already have a plane at that time and you needed a landing strip, or how did you?
Yes, I was actually operating in Lewistown, and I had 2 airplanes that my people were using, salespeople were using. They were at the Big Valley Airport at Reedsville. And then I had the opportunity to purchase the Carlisle cable system. And it was more interesting for me to live down here because the school systems were better. And so I moved my family down and my businesses down and moved my airplanes down also. By that time, I had started to take flying lessons myself and was flying out of what was the Carlisle Airport. It was an unpaved field that had been made when Interstate 81 was put through. And the contractor that was building Interstate 81 had to have different land deposit areas, and the people that owned the airport, the Davids family, got the contractor to actually scrape out a 3,000-foot strip that they were going to use for an airport. So when I moved to Carlisle, that was the Carlisle Airport. It was a mud field. If it was anything but a nice, clear day, you didn't want to think about flying. And there were several businesses in town that were trying to use airplanes, but they had their airplanes down at Capital City in Harrisburg because they were just not suitable to use here at the Carlisle Airport. I got a call one time from one of the people in one of the companies and said that they had heard that I was getting involved in aviation, and would I be interested in going together with them and trying to sort this Carlisle Airport out. So about 4 or 5 of us got together. We actually bought the landing strip and most of the farm that was there, paved the runway, took the wires down at the end of the runway because they were a definite hazard, and started to operate the airport. And I had, by that time, got my pilot's license and was able to actually use the airplanes myself. The people that I had with me, one of them moved down with me, and the other one that was a pilot did not. He went with another company. So I wound up with 2 airplanes flying one of them, finally learned to fly the other one.
And what was the year, do you recall?
About 1966, 67. I think it's been a while since I looked at my pilot's license, but I think it's dated 1966. I was licensed to fly, I think it says aircraft, single and multi-engine land and instrument. I never got a commercial pilot's license because I didn't need to. I was just flying for myself. Didn't have passengers that were paying me, so I didn't need that. But it was useful in the business.
Well, yes.
Yeah, and
useful for Carlisle.
it has survived, and I think it's a real benefit to Carlisle. Yes, there's no question. Elizabeth got her upside down wings. She was flying with me. We used to do roller coasters in the sky, and she liked that. But I convinced her that she really ought to learn to fly enough to land the airplane in case something happened to me. So I had a retired 747 pilot who was teaching avionics at the University of the Sequoias in California. And he came in on a weekend and taught her how to land the airplane. And I have a picture to prove it, her actually landing down at Cap City Airport.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the roller coaster experience was a good thing.
I would have always liked to have been a pilot, but I only did it to really understand it. And when I got my wings, I thought I would have to learn everything about the internal air, everything that is made of. I would have had practice 8 hours a day.
There was a fairly steep learning curve. She wasn't interested.
I was, but I knew if one mistake, you're gone.
He gave her a pin. He put a pin on her upside down wings, you know. She didn't bother with a license or
Registration.
anything.
No.
But she got her upside down wings.
And it was interesting.
So you've had land adventures and air adventures.
Mhm,
Well, she
yes.
liked the roller coasters. I had a Cessna 210 that was a fairly rugged airplane, a 6-cylinder, and it would chew out about 180 knots. But the nice part about it was a rugged airplane with wing struts. A lot of airplanes don't have wing struts. So this one had wing struts, and I trusted it a good bit. You could put a lot of pressure on the wing and it wouldn't come off. So I would take it up to a stall where the wing stops flying, and then flip it over and do a dive to the red line on the tachometer. Well, the red line comes up gradually, even though you have full power on, it still takes a while before it gets up to the red line, and you're going pretty fast. And I think it was, I would come down and then pull it back, pull the power off, and or put the power on and go back up, you know, to a stall again. So it duplicated a roller coaster
Yeah.
to some extent. She liked that. After all, you know, do whatever it takes, you know.
What
Well, this was after marriage or before marriage?
Oh,
that was, that
Yeah.
was,
This was after we got married, yeah.
oh, was it? Yeah.
Oh,
Because
that-
we didn't go out on Sundays when we were dating
Yeah.
and get into plane.
Well, we did a lot of roller
Fly
coastering
around.
before we got married.
Yeah.
But that whole business of getting married, that's a whole nother story.
Well,
Oh, but the next plane he put me on was one of the most wonderful things in my life. And you tell him.
Well, okay.
You know where we're going.
Yes, the opportunity arose for me to give her a Christmas present. And so I gave her this envelope, and she took a look at it and closed it up, put it in the drawer. Now, the reason for that was I had given her 2 Christmas presents, 2 envelopes.
And I didn't want more than one.
The first one was to the Passion Play at Omer Abergall. They only have it every 10 years. So this was 1990, and I said, I might not be alive in 2000, so I think I want to go now. So I bought the tickets for the Passion Play and gave it to her as a Christmas present. The Passion Play would have been in 1991 then. And she looked at that and said, okay, and then I gave her this other envelope, and she opened it, wouldn't even talk to me about it. It was a trip on the Concorde to go around the world.
Oh, that was just wonderful. Because I always wanted to go to the moon as a little girl. And my cousins who would swing me on the little thing I had to go up, he said,
The swing.
the swing, he said, how do you get down, Snaz? I said, just the way you go up. And I said, you can walk, and it's not cheese up there. There's no cheese. And, but I want to go to the moon. And they said, oh, I don't think you ever will. And my grandmother said, now you stop talking about this. If God wanted you there, he would put you there. So finally, it happened. Somebody
Wow.
went to the moon.
She always wanted to go to the moon, she said, and she had told me that story. So I figured, well, what the heck, if we get the chance to go in the Concorde, because they go 1,500 miles an hour. They don't fly anymore, but it's pretty exciting getting up to 60,000 feet with the,
Yeah,
what they
Mach
call
2.
the reheat on the afterburners. It really
And the
pushes you back in the seat.
I think it went about 10 inches, the airplane, but we were in Mach 2.
Well, there's enough heat on the
Yeah.
airframe that it expands 10 inches.
Oh, it was just wonderful. And we
Now,
were
was
never,
that the New York to Paris, or?
Well,
What
they
did you
did
do?
have a New York to London. I think they did fly New York to Paris.
Mhm.
The problem with the Concorde was that they couldn't use it overland because overland they had to keep the speed below the speed of sound, or they break all the windows in all the buildings and eardrums and all that craziness. So it only is really useful over water. When we were on it, they would take off from an airport and fly out to where the water started. Then they would tell you, okay, we'd be about 35,000 feet, and they say, okay, we're going to put the reheat on and go up to 60,000, where we can actually fly at 1,500 miles an hour. And in the front of the cabin, there were these digital indicators that would show you what your altitude was, what the speed of the plane was, and what the outside temperature was. And you sit there and you look at these things, and all of a sudden they just start to go around about as fast as they could, while they're going up. I tried one time when we were going up to keep my head off of the headrest, and with both hands I could not. It just pushed it back. The thrust of those afterburners is just fantastic. It was a nice ride,
What an
quiet.
experience.
Yeah.
it was 2 weeks. It took us about 3 months to prepare to go to it at Hershey to get all the medications.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Well, when you're going into foreign countries, you have to medicate, or you get all
Yeah.
kinds of diseases. Yeah.
Mhm.
but we were gone, 2 weeks?
Well, it was 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Mhm.
And we would never be on the plane more than, what was it?
Well, it was about
3
3
hours.
hours because
Yeah.
that's all the fuel that they could carry. But in 3 hours, he could go 4,500 miles.
And then,
And then how many, was the plane full?
Oh, yes.
99.
Well, I think it was 92.
Was it 92?
92, and they had a crew of 15, if I
Yes.
recall, something like that.
Well, how
There were
exciting.
4 in the cockpit. There was a pilot, co-pilot, the flight engineer, and the navigator in the cockpit. And then they had the cabin stewards.
But we had 3 days at where we went, and it was just wonderful, all the things they taught us and showed us, and we were all happy. Most all of them were from Texas,
Oh,
and there were 2 of us from Pennsylvania.
Well, she got a ride in the cockpit. You,
Oh,
you
yes.
have a picture. I probably have the picture with me here someplace if I could
did
look
you
at
have
it.
your wings on?
No, I didn't have my wings on, but I went up to the cockpit to take off, and we went down, the runway was 250 miles per hour.
There's your picture. There's,
I found him looking at my pictures, and he took me, he said, now if you can't see out, come up on my lap. But it was
You want the picture?
yeah.
Hold it up there so the
Oh,
camera
sure,
can
yeah.
camera can get it.
but it was a very interesting.
Oh, there's a picture.
Oh,
Oh, that's a Ferris wheel.
No, it isn't, it's beyond. And it's like when you get on it, it's as long as a train up there.
Oh, this is the one with the cable cars. Yeah.
Of course, we go to see grandchildren a good bit.
Oh,
And I think
alright.
that's a
That's
great,
a great
great
grandchild.
grandchild.
So, what is your total count between the 2 of you?
He has 1,
I
great,
don't-
and I have 2.
All right.
Yes, 2 girls, and that's nice.
Well, now let's come back to Carlisle again.
Okay.
Now, this is so exciting that you go jaunting out.
We get off on too many stories.
Because you were talking before about your wedding anniversary and the Embers, and will you talk a little bit about the Embers and about your party at the Embers? How did you get into the Embers? And I know that George has business interest in hotels, so.
Well, I had bought the Embers. The owner of it was in a divorce situation, and he called me up one day. He knew that I owned a couple other hotels out at exit 52. And he said, would you like another one? And I said, I don't know why. And he said, well, I need to sell it. So I bought it, and of course it had a nice banquet operation going. And our anniversary was coming up, so she decided to have it there. She had pulled a birthday party on me down at the Hotel Hershey one time. Surprise party. I walked in and everybody's singing happy birthday to me.
With a 15-piece orchestra.
Oh yeah, she knows how to throw a party, let's put it that way. But anyway, she decided to have it out at the Embers. I think it probably cost me just as much at the Embers as it did down at the Hotel Hershey, because after the birthday party down at the Hotel Hershey, they presented me with the bill, and you know, your eyeballs go around. When I finally got the total bill out at the Embers, why, I did the same thing, yeah. But she knows how to throw a party. We had 200 or 300 people at the party, I guess, wasn't it?
250.
Oh, you had 200? Okay. Well, I know there were an awful lot of people, and she heard a big orchestra. And
Well, I thought he needed that because I never heard him talk about having a birthday party, you know, with anyone. And I thought the cable came, and he should have something. And I took my daughter along, and she said, I said, Bibby, I shouldn't do this. And she said, oh, I think he'll like it.
well, this was a surprise birthday
Yeah.
party.
This is the Hershey one.
Uh-huh. And he knew the fella at Hershey.
Well, her decoy to get me to this party at the Hotel Hershey, a friend of mine was the president of Public Broadcasting System. And he called me up one day and he said he was having a little difficulty here in Harrisburg, and would I go along with him, you know, to smooth things out. Now, I didn't know much about what it was, but I assumed it was with the cable industry or something. So they pick us up, you know, and we're merrily going down to Harrisburg and chatting away. And on the way, I happened to see one of our friends in a car and waved to them. Didn't think anything of it. Apparently, they passed us, and we were going slower. So apparently, the friend got to the birthday party before I got there. But anyway,
Well, the fellas came, and what did they do that evening?
well, they roasted me, naturally.
I had the whole end.
I think I gave you a tape of that roast, but
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
sure. Yeah.
It was fun for him.
Oh yeah, her surprise parties were nice.
I only did 2 in my life, so
Well, I think it was
Other than just with
very
family.
deserving.
yes.
So, but the Embers you had then, and then you had an anniversary, this was your 10th anniversary party that you had there?
And then we had one other, I guess it was a couple of years ago. He said, I think we're going to London. I thought, oh, that's wonderful. I like London. I have a granddaughter who is living there now. She's a marine biologist and she's working there. And so we got on the plane and we left. And we got off and we got a bus out to this little area. And guess where we spent the next week? Living in,
Oh, you're talking about the
go
trip.
ahead.
Well, I had the opportunity to get a tour with a couple other people that spent a week in London and several days in Windsor Castle. So
We lived there
We-
for the week.
we actually got an apartment in Windsor Castle. It was after they had had a fire and burned part of it.
I remember that.
And so they had rebuilt it, and I think the Queen was just trying to recover some of the cost of rebuilding it, so they were leasing it out, you know. But we were right next to the chapel in Windsor Castle. Windsor Castle was a sort of a fort, you know, a big wall around it. And then there's the area where the Queen was, and then there's an open area, and there was a chapel there, and the sort of hotel that we were in. They have ceremonies there. When we were there, the Queen Mum, she was still alive. I think she was celebrating her 100th birthday.
Mhm.
Okay. And of course, they had parties with that. And the Queen also had her Order of the Garter ceremony.
Mhm.
Every 4 or 5 years, they bring all the civil servants that have risen up to high levels, the generals and whatnot, and they retire, and they have a place there where they can live. A lot of them retire there. But they make them members of or she makes them members of the Order of the Garter. So we got to go to the Order of the Garter ceremonies. And they had a ceremony for the Queen Mum in the chapel. We got to go into that. It was nice, you know.
Wonderful.
It was wonderful living there because we had every morning someone speaking to us from their military and ours. And when I came home, I looked what I had written. And it said, I smell the coming
The winds
of
of
a
war.
war,
Winds of war, you called it.
the winds of war.
Yeah.
And right after that, we were hit in New York. And they thought it was they who were going to be, because they knew something was going on, but they didn't know what.
Wow. So
But-
this was the summer of 2011.
The group that I was with had managed to get a dinner set up with in Parliament. Well, you know, they give us a real tour, and each table at the dinner had a lord. You know, one of the members of the lords. So we got to the table, and Elizabeth said, "There's no lord here," and I said, well, okay, but we got something better than that. And she said, what? And I said, well, the guy sitting on your other side of you is the conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra.
And I still have his address. I have where I can get all his music.
Well, that was better than the Lord.
Wow.
And so I said, isn't that to him? We didn't get any Lord. Well, then he said he was what he was. And I said, oh, he was so talented. I said, what? How old were you when you started to play instruments? He said 32.
Oh, my.
So he was very talented.
She always asked that question. She was a singer herself.
Oh.
She's a soprano. And she always, when she's with somebody that has been on a stage or something, she'll go talk to them and afterwards ask them, when did you start singing? When did you start playing?
When did this happen?
And a lot of them
'Cause
come
you're
out
born with
4
it.
and 7 and 8 and things like that. And this guy said 32.
Was this Baron born? Or?
I don't remember.
I
what
forget
it-
his name, but it's in my telephone book.
Yeah, she calls him up frequently.
Oh, sure.
But anyway, we had a good time.
Yeah,
Well, it sounds
in
like
the 23 years, I mean, it's just been very fortunate
Oh, has it
for
been
us
that
to
long?
do
I
that.
thought we were at 22 and counting.
Well, 3's coming.
Any parties in the making?
No.
Well, I would like to just touch on, since you mentioned this conductor who was next to you, if you would talk at all about your first husband, who was the conductor of the band
Oh,
in
yes.
Carlisle and the director of music at Carlisle High School.
I went to school with playing a clarinet with the Lynn Brenneman from Borlake Springs. And when I graduated, he said, you have got to play in the Carlisle band. I don't want you to stop. Well, I tried and he tried and they wouldn't let me play because I was a girl. So I did other things to go to classes to get a job, you know, and that sort of thing. And it happened that it didn't, 10 years later, they didn't have any girls. So finally, I just married their conductor. And he couldn't do anything for me.
You still didn't get in the band.
I still didn't get in the band. 1970, they left women. I was putting 2 girls to college.
Well, you talk about what did she do? She was in the plays at Boiling Spring,
Well, hold those
and
up.
she's over here. She was the lead female singer. She's even got some of her.
That's because I was studying
Was
boys.
it Up in the Air?
Yeah.
She was actually the one that sang the leads in these operettas. Were
Yeah.
they operettas that the high school put on? Yeah. Well,
But,
she also played clarinet in the band, as I understand.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know her then.
So how was it that you met Hank then?
Well, all we girls had crushes on him for years.
You just
Because
won out.
we went to band practice and our bands got together and we were in, you know, state band and then and all these fellas would rehearse us. And all of us thought he was Harry James. You know, he is a Harry James. We teenagers. So that's how I knew him. I didn't know him personally, you know, just the band director. And when I was, one Christmas after I was working, I had to go get a Christmas tree for our office because it was getting close. And it was snowing and raining and doing. And he said, aren't you that kid from Boiling Springs? I'm up at the square. He said, what are you doing out here? And I said, I'm taking this back to the office. He said, how are you getting it there? I said, I'm going to drag it. So he said, well, I'll take it back for you, and I'll put it in your office then. And I think he said, I guess you're teaching now, aren't you? I said, well, I didn't know. And he said, oh, I thought you would be teaching. And so I thought that, you know, I won't ever see him again. So my neighbor had a party, and he was there. And I couldn't believe that. 18 months later, he called me. And we got married. We were married for 27 years. But
We're
it
catching
was,
up.
and
Yes, you are.
he was so good with my two girls because he was putting them in the band all the time, and I was keeping them busy with music too, and send them to church to sing and so forth. So we just had a great time with the girls by seeing that they were going to probably not study music, but they'd be going to college. They were very good students, and he was great to those.
Well, then you were a clarinet player yourself, and then you met another clarinet player.
Yes, and guess what? I walked in one day to his house, and his son was home, and I had never been there, but he asked me to come over for something, and I heard this clarinet player, and I thought it was John, his son, and I said, I have never heard a tone as close to Benny Goodman. And I was looking for John. Here he was sitting there playing it. So I made him practice. Mine was over. I was too old to practice. And so I got him into the Carlisle band, and now he's playing in a professional band in Florida with all professionals. He's still playing clarinet. He's
Well,
very
I
good.
had
Well, I think you could have had a career in music if you had chosen that route. Is
Yes.
that
I had
correct?
2 music scholarships offered me when I graduated from high school, but I wasn't interested because the pay back then was non-existent. You taught music, and that didn't work out. I was more interested in getting a college education and learning, but I had actually been in the Carlisle band.
Yes.
I had a situation where one of my sons was getting in trouble, not necessarily doing his homework the way he should, and I had to take him under my wing, taught him how to play the clarinet, and got him in the Carlisle band and stayed with him and actually taught him how to march. He never was in the high school band. This was the Carlisle, the town band. And I stayed with the band after he left for college for a few years, and then business got the best of me. I couldn't spend the time on it. So after she got me back so I could play decently again, I went back to the Carlisle band. I've been there ever since.
But
It's interesting. It's a nice
I read
group,
the
yeah.
music. He played piano beautifully. I played piano, but not as what his music was. It was very difficult. So I made him practice 10 minutes a day.
Oh yeah, get the bullwhip out. Crack it.
Don't want to make Elizabeth mad.
I
No,
don't practice.
I like music in the house.
I don't practice 10 minutes a day anymore, but last night I stumbled around a couple of pieces, and when I got up, I heard her say, "That was beautiful." You know, it does make you feel good.
Yes,
you know,
it's nice to have an audience.
somebody says
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Now, we have been talking about 45 minutes, so I think today we'd like to wrap it up after about an hour. If there's something that you can think of a story that you want to tell now in this session before we have a close out, or,
One of my favorite stories
okay.
we haven't touched on is when we got married. So I'll go into that one. We had been going together for several years,
4 years, I think we've been.
and each of us had said to the other, looked at us straight in the eye and said, I have no intention of ever getting married again. You know? I can remember that one session down at Lancaster. I'm driving down towards Lancaster, and I looked at her and I said, I have no intention of getting married. Well, anyway, my youngest daughter, had scheduled her wedding for late May in 1992. And this was late 1991 sometime. And it was getting to a place where I figured, I have such an interest in this woman that I really want to ask her to marry me. So I did. She didn't hear me.
I didn't hear him. And I wasn't going to ask him either.
A couple of weeks later, she's talking around and it's sounding like she really would like to get married. And I said, well, I asked you if you'd marry me, but you didn't answer me. So what's the deal here? We're going to tramp on Jenny's wedding. If we don't do it now, I just as soon get married now and let Jenny have next
Correct.
spring for her wedding.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about when he said that,
So finally,
but I couldn't hear him.
she says, well, give me a minute. And I said, okay. And she said, yes. That was a very
I
short
said, I
minute.
have to think of, you have to give me time to think about it.
Yeah.
Yes. And he said, where would you like to go on a honeymoon? And I now this is awful. I regret it. Oh, I said, we should go to Switzerland, don't you think?
Well, that was something of interest to me. My ancestry goes back to the Palatinate, which was the people that were kicked out of Switzerland when the Roman Catholics took over and the Protestants were all kicked out. They all came to Lancaster County, and that's where I came. Okay, you the same thing. So I had always wanted to visit Switzerland, never had. And I had a friend that had lived in the States. He was a manufacturer's representative for one of the suppliers that I had supplying me with equipment that we resold. And his name was Fred Schultz. And he had brought his family over to live in New Jersey. And apparently the schools just weren't something that they were interested in. So his wife, Rosalie, finally talked him into going back to Switzerland, quit his job here, got another job in Switzerland, but I had stayed in touch with him. So I called up Fred and I said, we'd like to come over and visit, and didn't tell him why. And would you be available? So I set up with them after I had bought my plane tickets. I set up with them to have dinner with them when we got to Zurich. Okay, that was all right, but we got married. We decided to go down to Winchester, Virginia, where there's no tests. You can just go in, get a license, and get married. In Pennsylvania, you have to have blood tests and all that craziness. And the word would get out. We weren't interested in that. So we got married in Winchester, hopped on a TWA flight from Dulles to Paris. And in Paris, we got off the airplane, got on the airplane to go to Zurich, and never left the dock. We sat there for about 3, 4, 5 hours, and even the pilot was getting really bent out of shape because no one would tell him why he couldn't get clearance to leave. Apparently there was a strike, and the only planes they were allowed to, that were being allowed to fly were French, Air France or something like that. And we were on TWA. So we sat there. Finally, the pilot said that he had managed to get clearance to go park the plane on the south end of the field, and there would be a bus there to take us someplace. He didn't know where. That took another couple hours. We finally got off the airplane onto a bus. They had to roll stairs up and all that stuff, And they gave us tickets on the train to go from Paris to Zurich. Well, I didn't even know where the train station was. Managed to finally get to the train station, managed to find the train, managed to get into Zurich. Oh, it was awful. On the way, we were on these cars where there's about 3 or 4 seats this way, 3 or 4 seats opposite you.
Oh, mhm.
And you sit and you look at people across there, and there's a baggage rack above you, and you put your baggage up there, but it's only half as wide as it should be. and the bags are always rocking. You wonder which one's going to fall down next, and they'd fall down on you. She got tired of that and went up to the bar. I had to stay there
I don't drink.
because of our suitcases, because I didn't want somebody to go through them or steal them, so I had to stay there. Well, she stayed and stayed and stayed. Finally, she came back, and she said, wow, she just had to tell somebody that she just got married. So she had told somebody up there, and they had a big party for her.
But the funniest thing was us getting on the train.
Well, you're talking about in what's that town where you go from France to England? Basel.
Yes, yes.
You had to get off at Basel and go through customs. So we get off and tried to go through customs. We had met a guy that was teaching
He was
at
a
the
professor.
American University,
Mhm.
someplace in Switzerland. Made friends with him.
Mhm.
So he helps us. We go through this customs, and he went through, I went through, and Elizabeth didn't come through. And of course, you can't see because the door's closed, nobody to talk to. We stood there and waited. Finally, he's looking at his watch and he said, these trains run on the hour, and if you're not on it, you don't go. And you have to wait till the next day. He said, I'm going to go across the walkway, across the tracks, go down, get on the train, and I'll hold the door open, and they can't go until you come. We all had big suitcases, dragging those around. Finally, she comes through. We grab suitcases, go up across this
About
crosswalk,
30 steps.
down the other side,
Yeah.
dragging the suitcase, and he's back there waving his hand, and I could see at the back of the train there was a conductor, and he's looking under the train trying to see why it wouldn't go, because you could see it jerk every now and then. The engineer was trying to make it go. We went back to where he was, and got on. He pulled his foot out. The door closed. The train left. They left the conductor in the station. But we did get on the train. Well, anyway, we got to Zurich and crashed. And I called up my friend, Fred Schultz, and Rosalie answered. And she says, George, where have you been?
It took us 2 days to get there.
Rosalie, it's a long story. I'll tell you later. Long story short, we did have dinner with them. She called up AAA of Switzerland, and they said, it's going to be beautiful. It's November. It's not the tourist season. There's not going to be anybody around. No snow predicted or anything. We starts off, it snowed every day we were in Switzerland.
Oh, it did.
But
So,
that's
that was our life.
we had a wonderful time. Yes, visited when there's no tourists there. You have to call ahead and find out which hotel in the town is open. You couldn't make reservations, so you call up and you say, "Okay, we'll be there tonight." So you go to the next hotel or next city and use that hotel. Then that night you call ahead to find out which one is open. So we did that the whole way around Switzerland. Had a wonderful time.
And had a wonderful time with the Italians.
Well, it sounds like you've had not just a marriage, an adventure
It
from the
was an
beginning,
adventure.
right?
The honeymoon was an adventure, yeah.
It was.
There's more to it than that, but if
Oh,
you're out
Well,
of time.
maybe we can pick that
Yeah,
up
sure.
the next time. Oh, it's just delightful to
Yeah, it
speak
was.
with you and hear your stories.
Well,
and
people
your
have
pleasure.
stories,
Yes.
and that's the main purpose of this whole program,
That's
in my
right.
estimation.
Yes,
Let people tell their stories. Their genealogies, they give the facts,
right.
but the stories have to accompany it
Right.
so that you can relate to the people.
Well, that's right, and we want to know about these people who have made this possible for us to do this for others, and
Yes.
we thank you so much
Oh,
for your gift and for
Happy to-
making this possible and for talking to us.
Well,
today.
happy to give you a couple of our stories.
Yes,
We
well.
have more.
it's
I'm sure.
been a lot of. We have 19 grandchildren altogether, I think, though.
However that is.
Wow.
I have 5.
Our children have been busy.
Okay, I guess we'll stop for now,
Okay.
and then
All
we'll
right, thank you.